In this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off in the previous video, talking about 1980s category romance novels. And there were, in addition, the ones aside from the Harlequin romance novels that I've talked about before, I also had mentioned the Del Candlelight series from the original Del Candlelight series that ran from 1967 to 1982. And also in a previous video, I'd showed Lancer Books had a series called Valentine Romance, which ran around 200 novels. And Fawcett had a series called Cameo Romance, and I think those ended around 1972. But in the late 70s and early 80s, other publishers started doing their own numbered series. So we'll talk about that. But before I get to that, I wanted to talk about this book I just recently got. There's my bookmark. I'm still reading it. It's called Dangerous Men and Adventurous Women. And came out in 1992, although this mass market paperback edition is from 1996. Now, from the cover, you might just think, oh, it looks like like a self-help book or maybe like an etiquette book. But what it actually is a series of essays about the romance genre, edited by Jane Ann Krentz. These essays are written by various famous romance writers. And it's very interesting because they defend the genre from various charges that critics have laid against the genre. So, for example, the happy ending, they defend that as sort of an ordered universe. They have different opinions about things, but it's very interesting for fans of the genre to read, because there's lots of arguments in here that you can use if someone says, oh, I don't like the writing in them, or criticizes it from a feminist perspective. There's lots of interesting arguments that are made in this book. So I recommend checking this out if you're a fan of the genre in general, the romance novel genre. Okay, now we go to the 1980s category romances, and the most famous one is Silhouette Romance, which was set up by Simon & Schuster in 1980 to compete with Harlequin. This is an early one right here. This is from 1980. It's book number 33. And I love the sort of simple, old-fashioned cover there. And this is a later one. This is their flagship series, Silhouette Romance, is the title of it. This is book 844 from 1992. Now the thing is, Silhouette Romance, competing with Harlequin, published a lot more American romance novelists, which did cause Harlequin then to start publishing more American writers. And in around 1984, Harlequin actually bought Silhouette from Simon & Schuster. So, Harlequin novels, they had the Silhouette Romance series, but it was actually, this one here is actually published by Harlequin. They kept the branding for a long time, until I think around 2009 or so. They just absorbed it all in to Harlequin Romance, which I'll show you in a little bit here. And so here's another Silhouette series, which also started in the 1980s, called Silhouette Special Edition. And this is book 636 from 1990. And this is book 688 from 91. And we have two more here. Now, later on, Silhouette Special Edition became Harlequin Special Edition, and it's still being published today under that title. And here's this is actually an introductory copy. Sometimes they would have that, but this is book 812 by Barbara Faith, who I have another book here later that I'll show you. Now, another Silhouette series, it's hard to see there, but this is book 175 of Silhouette Intimate Moments, which sounds like a, very romantic-y type book, but Silhouette Intimate Moments actually focused on romantic suspense. This book's from 1987. And Silhouette intimate moments in, I forget what year it was, probably in the 2000s, it became Silhouette Romantic Suspense. And it's still being published today as Harlequin Romantic Suspense. So this series is still being published. Another Silhouette series that Harlequin is still publishing is Silhouette Desire. This is book 183 and book 270. And I showed one of these before when I had bought it, I believe, in a previous video. But again, sometime around 2009 or so, Silhouette Desire became Harlequin Desire, and it's still known as that today. Now, Simon & Schuster wasn't the only publisher getting in on the Category Romance Act in the 1980s. There was also Jove Books. And you can see there, Jove book, Second Chance at Love. Now this one's unusual. This is early on, book 9. Let's see what year this is. I think it's probably 1982 or 1981. This one's unusual because it's a Regency novel. Most Second Chance at Love books were contemporaries, that took place in now. So there's another Second Chance at Love. This one's book number 255. See what year this is from. $1985. And then later on they had some better covers, but I don't know exactly when they stopped doing them, probably in the early 90s. This is a spin-off series, Second Chance of Love, To Have and to Hold. Book number 20, is it 20 or 26? Hard to tell, it looks like 20. And this particular series, To Have and to Hold, was about married couples who sort of find romance again. Let's see what year this is. This is 1984. And also in the early 1980s, Signet Books. Originally, they started a series called Adventures in Love. This is book number 26 and 27 from 1982, I believe. Yes, June 1982. So Adventures in Love, I don't think it lasted too much longer. I think there were only a few more books. Sometimes I think book number 32 or so was the final one. And then Signet's parent company, New American Library, started a new category romance series called Rapture Romance. And this is book 81 and 96. Now, I think this is 1984. I think they ended it sometime shortly after this, so there weren't too many more books after 96, probably around 100, and then they stopped. There is a book series that I don't have that has a somewhat similar cover format. It's called Now and Forever, I believe, something like that. I don't know who published that one. And of course, Dell Candlelight also had their Candlelight Romance Ecstasy series, which ran from like 1980 to 86, I believe. And I don't have any of those anymore, although I have had them at some point. And there was also Loveswept. Dell also had a Candlelight Ecstasy Supreme. There's also Loveswept. This is a series, not Loveswept, but it's called, what is it? Love Spell, which I don't know much about. Love Spell there. I don't know who the publisher is. Dorchester, which is Leisure Books. That's from 1995. And now finally, we're just going to run through some other stuff here that I happen to have. Elizabeth Thornton. This is a historical romance from Pinnacle Books that I've started reading. I haven't gotten very far in it yet, though. This is from 1990. Copyright Mary George, so that must be Elizabeth Thornton's real name. Finally here, we have some books by Gallen, which was, they all had this, some of them are contemporaries, they'll say on the side. Some are contemporary romance, some are historical. And these came out around 1979 to 1982, I believe. And they all had this kind of frame around the covers, and they'll all say Gallen in the corner. But they're actually from Pocket Books, which was an imprint of Simon & Schuster, who was also doing Silhouette. I believe they did about 74 of these Gallen books, Gallen romances. I want to get more of them. This Waters of Eden is the only one I've read. This is another Barbara Faith book. I showed you a Silhouette special edition that Barbara Faith wrote. So this is one of her early novels. But yeah, Waters of Eden is one I've read, and I've actually seen a second copy of it at a thrift store later, so it's probably not too hard to find. I do recommend it. It was a great book. Catherine Kent is actually a pen name for Joan Dial. And we have some more here. Kristen James is actually a pen name for Candace Camp. And she also wrote other books that were The Golden Sky, I think, and some other sky type books. And finally here we have the other two Gallen romances that I have. One is a historical and one is a contemporary. And I want to get more, but in this one actually says Made in Canada up there. And sometimes you'll see foreign editions that say Cherish Romance. In 1982, Gallen Pocketbook stopped doing the Gallen books, and then they started the Tapestry Romance series around October 1982. And they did around 94 of those. I'll show those in a future video. But that's it for my romance collection for now. See you in a later video.